Hey everyone, Brian Kelly here. Welcome to another episode of the Cultivate Church Planting Podcast. I hope you've been enjoying the show, and I want to tell you about an opportunity to support church planting and church planters. Go to cgn.org, click on donate. You'll see a drop down for church planting. I'm going to put the link in the show notes, but this is a great way to practically support the work of the ministry, support church planting, support church planters. We're going to see that all those funds go right out onto the field. So just wanted to tell you about that opportunity. And now let's get into the episode. All right, welcome to the Cultivate Church Planting Podcast. And we are excited today because we have a great episode with none other than Daniel Williams back in the house.
Oh, it's so good to be here with you, Brian.
Hey, Daniel, how are you?
I'm living the dream, man. I'm excited to introduce a new friend of mine and the work that God is doing in Turin, Italy. Is that right? Is that correct?
Yeah, Turin.
Probably about an accent.
Yeah,
It sounded good to me.
Well,
How is it?
Well, in English, it's Turin, and then in Italian, they say Torino.
oh, man, see that.
Torino.
Like Gran Torino?
That's right.
Oh, yeah. You know some stuff.
Come on, there you go. You
He made his research.
It's my research up here. We're coming on. It's like, who's
Yeah.
hey, who's on the show? Who's on? Okay, got it.
Son, pasta.
Well, every country has their own names for their own cities. So, like, Italians, instead of Venice, it's Venezia. Instead of Rome, it's Roma. Instead of Florence, it's Firenze. And so Turin is Torino. But,
Why can't we use the Italian names? The Italian names sound better.
well, I mean, it's the same thing like Germany, Deutschland. Like, why don't we? Just because.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it church planting or is it missions? We don't know. But we do the same thing, sort of.
Are you talking about David Doubts?
I want to work this out. Just the works.
Words.
How we do different words.
That's weird. Yeah.
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 But I am excited to introduce you to the living legend, the
Oh,
one and only is
down.
I am not a legend, and
You don't have to be a great legend. I'm just,
shy away from crazy titles.
Yeah.
Like just a guy living in Italy.
Okay. Tell us about Italy. We want to know. Our listeners want to know. Here's our listeners. They're interested in church planting. A lot of them are pastors. Some of them are church leaders. Some of them are in school. Some of them are just attending a church and have a great heart for what God's doing around the world. We're called Calvary Global Network, so it's good to get the global in there. And Italy it's kind of a place. So I've never been to Italy. I've been a lot of places. I haven't been to Italy. It's one of those places where we hear about it and it's kind of like that romantic kind of awesome, like wow, and kind of you want to go there, everyone wants to go there. You've been there for a long time. You've been there for 18 years? 19 years. Tell us about Italy, but more importantly, tell us about who you are and what you're doing in Italy. That's what we really want to know.
Yeah. So I guess the quick point on international life, I think for anybody who considers a massive change internationally, you're going to go on mission, plant a church. There is the dreamed version of a place, and then there's the reality of a place.
Yeah.
Italy is a great place to visit, So sometimes, unless you go.
But I wouldn't all live there. You lived there for 19 years.
Yeah. So document-wise, bureaucracy-wise, every public office you go to, it's like, no, you can't do that. It's an immediate no. Taxation is high. A lot of rules. Just the cultural differences you go through, the linguistic challenges you go through. Visas and just
Tell me about the visas, because that's a lot of people wonder about this when they're thinking about missions. This is especially important for missions. What do you do? Are you a resident? Do you have visas? What's your situation?
Well, to come fully clean and make public confession.
So here we go.
Hopefully the Italian government never hears this, but
well, listen, 150 viewers will listen.
all 150 faithful.
Yeah.
So to you, 150 faithful. I actually moved to the country 19 years ago, and the pastor I went to work with thought that there was something we can do document-wise, and I get to the immigration office with him, and the immigration officer looks at the gentleman that I was working with, and they said, there's nothing for this kid. He had to apply for a visa at the consulate in Los Angeles before coming here. And the pastor I was working with looked at the person and said, well, I thought I did something before with a family member, and So I ended up living 4 years illegally.
Whoa! I
Even-
can't hear this.
Yeah, that's crazy. But I just, I was there, I rented an apartment, and I have no visa. And I just prayed, like, Lord, I don't want to lie to be here.
Yeah.
And I went back after 4 months for a wedding in the family, and I flew back very scared. I landed at the Venice airport. I gave them my passport, and they stamped it and said, "Welcome to Italy." And
Okay.
so I came and went.
They got ice over there or no?
We know it's coming up these days. It's coming up. Yeah, that's
Sorry.
fortunately.
My bad.
Yeah, fortunately, I've been a citizen now for 7 years.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
I passed asking for visas, but
Yeah.
eventually got the missionary visa worked out as the church in Montebelluna that I was serving at, and many other missionaries have come and been able to apply for visas and all that. And
Very
so
cool.
yeah, so visas, you got to apply for a visa.
Yeah.
Step one, don't be illegal.
Do it the right way, okay? I totally agree with that.
Don't follow my example. Do what I say. Don't do
What I did. Yeah, we lived in Uganda for 10 years, and it was a constant process of visas. And
That's
there was a path to residency and citizenship. Our two daughters were actually born in Uganda.
Wow.
So at the time, they didn't allow dual citizenship, but now they could actually become Ugandan citizens if they wanted to.
I can tell you the government and paperwork, it develops and evolves. And, like for a while we talked about like if your grandma's from Italy, then you can get citizenship or, you have to reapply. So oftentimes we're so zealous to go without doing the research.
Yeah.
But it's good to do the research and to continue to do the research. Because things change almost yearly.
And you don't want to wreck, talking about doing it right, you don't want to wreck a ministry or work just because you're trying to cut corners or if you're in there. Because you can take a break, come out, fix it, do it right, and then it's going to...
Yeah, the first 4 years I lived in the country, I even taught English, and that wasn't completely legal, and actually it wasn't legal at all. Like my qualifier it wasn't legal at all. And so we finally got the missionary visa worked out. I actually quit my English teaching job, and I didn't know I was going to survive, but God was faithful. I lived at the Bible college that we had at the time as a staff worker, so we had the apartments for the guys and the girls, and so I reduced my income and reduced my outflow and lived at the Bible college. So
And you're married?
married for 11 years, and I've been in country for 19. My wife comes from Phoenix, Arizona. She's a very talented songwriter, worship leader,
Oh, nice.
and all that. So
Does she lead worship at the church?
she does sometimes. I mean, she's kind of had a lot of health battles over the years, and so over the last year and a half, she's probably led 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
But we have a lot of people in the church now who are leading, and she's raised up a lot of leaders in that way. So we have 3 or 4 different people on the rotation, which is pretty incredible. And beyond that, we've been really intentional about relationships with other churches in the city. And so we have some of their worship leaders come lead worship in our church as well.
Is there a camaraderie that you have in the evangelical Italian churches? In that
Most of the evangelical Italian world is really territorial. And so I wouldn't say there's a strong camaraderie. I think because I'm an American, I get this automatic pass that goes beyond their territorial lines. Like they're actually happy that I'm there, and some friendship.
Interesting. Yeah, that's good.
I don't know. There's a lot of do-it-yourself pastors who they feel like they need to go plant because they weren't raised up or encouraged, they weren't discipled. So people are trying to grow their own kingdom, and so they keep people under their leadership. So Italy has a lot of guys who went out in frustration. They didn't go out in intentionality. And so because of that, a lot of territorialism and a lot of bad blood between guys. So we come in and we're really intentional, at least in Turin, in the last 6.5 years of living there and church planting, that from day one, we really saw out a lot of relationships, a lot of desire to bless, to create moments of generosity. My wife's got this kids music project that we give to the other churches, and this wristband's a QR code that brings the kids to Spotify. And so we're handing out CDs, we're handing out wristbands. I'm going to churches, even with that act of generosity. So because I'm an American, but also because we're seeking out opportunities for friendship and generosity.
Like goodwill.
So I mean, I preach at the Assembly of God Church on the south side, a Brethren church in the city, the Pentecostal Romanian church. So Yeah, so we have the perspective of we're on the front lines. Turin is a city of 2.2 million people. It's the fourth largest city
big.
of Italy. Yeah, I mean,
By the way, you can use the Italian names around here. You can call it Torino if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, we're just
culture.
Torino.
The Culture Cultivate Church Planting Podcast.
Yeah. Bringing multiculturalism to a home near you.
Pretending like we're cultured. Okay, no, I'm kidding. Sorry.
So yeah, just I think from the reality that we're in such a massive city of 2.2 million people, the fourth largest city, Fiat Motors, Lavazza Coffee, the Shroud of Turin.
Oh dang! I didn't even put it two and two together.
Shroud of Turin? Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Nope, it's in a big stone box.
Okay.
It's on display every once in a while.
Is it because the light can affect the?
Yeah, it's some guy tried to light it on fire at some point. Just to protect it from the elements and whatever. But yeah, the risen Christ is in a stone tomb again, so it's locked. It's locked in a sarcophagus. But because of the size of the city, I don't think we have the luxury. And the smallness of the evangelical impact, I don't think we have the luxury for isolation.
Yeah, I like the way you said that. That's
We
true at a lot of places that don't have a large church presence, evangelical presence. It's like
I want friends, I want Christian.
You need
friends. Yeah. So yes, I think sometimes we get divided over nuance, divided over things that maybe aren't always essential, and so in our context, like I'm actively pursuing friendship with the Assembly of God, the Brethren, giving these gifts of generosity with the kids' music, and so we're all about that. Just we know we can be who we are while still having friends, right? We can still reach out.
And it would work together,
Let me ask you this: because you're pursuing relationship and unity, how has that blessed your church plant in that city? And actually, Proverbs says, he who refreshes others are themselves refreshed.
Yeah.
How has that refreshed you and built a culture in your church plan of just, actually reaching people for Jesus and being on mission, that love that you have?
Well, the first story I would say is that when we were exploring Turin 7.5 years ago, we came for a year from the last city we were living in. We explored 6 or 7 times looking for housing, trying to meet people. And there was a story from day one where I met the Assembly of God pastor on the south side. And we had coffee in February, and another visit was going to be in April. And he said, that weekend you're here in April, come on a weekend, teach in our church on this Sunday.
Wow.
And the fact that he wanted me to come to his church, he knew we were praying about planting a church in the city. And they've had a division a few times of people who tried to plant without their blessing. But the fact that he extended this invitation of love, I was like, man, this guy's one of those guys of peace. When you come to a city, you find a man of peace.
Yeah.
So I went there on a Sunday, preached to the church, and the pastor was like, hey, this guy, he's praying about moving here. If you've heard on the radio the Calvary teachings, because at the time, Chuck's translations in Italian were being broadcast.
Okay.
How
did he sound? How was the translator?
Yeah, the guy's talented. I mean, the guy's from Rome, and he did a good job.
Deep voice, nice.
Yeah, did some. We had did some of the Chuck pauses, and yeah. No, it's a
how do you say and
don't yeah. So, but it's good, and it had impact, and I could say that I'm living in my city because of Chuck on the radio in Italian, and Craig Qualm from Montebelluna, and Brent Harrell down in Rome, and the guy who translated Chuck, now he's planting a church, and his audios are also on the radio, Vincenzo Cotroneo.
Do people get confused hearing his voice in his own?
Yeah, they're like, he's our bad Chuck, but this sounds different. Yeah. Well, they thought that some of the radio listeners actually thought that the real Chuck Smith spoke Italian. Like, wait, those were translations?
That good.
Yeah, he's like, just putting out content in multiple languages, but
that's anointing.
That's anointing.
But that first pasture, that relationship, I would say one thing that bore out fruit was that guy treated me with love. And so one of the things over the last 6.5 years as I've been praying about finding a building was, Lord, we want to find a neighborhood in this massive city, these massive metro downtowns that are highly populated, condominium buildings, a lot of residential, densely populated. Lord, lead us to a neighborhood that doesn't yet have an evangelical presence. I'm not just looking to avoid other Calvaries. I'm looking to avoid any other brother, like, hey, like, we're here to bless you and to not take away. So from the very beginning, before we moved there, I asked this Assembly of God pastor, where do you think we should start? Where do you think we should live? And so he said, you should either do the church of Moncalieri on the south side or downtown. So we lived in Moncalieri, started the Bible study in our home, and then we moved to be a church in the city downtown. So
Wow.
I told him, hey, we did both of your recommendations. See, that's we joke about that now. So there's this love and camaraderie, and we do events. We did the CD launch of both the CDs that my wife did for kids music at their church. So we've used their church for parties and other events, and to realize that there's probably going to be some really amazing things that come from those relationships if we would just kind of be open to a love relationship with some other Christian.
That's a good word for anybody, whether you're in Italy or in, down the street here in the United States, that we got to work together. The same thing when we had a church in Bellingham, Washington, north of Seattle. And it was similar because it was not a Christian area at all. And there was a pastor's prayer meeting with about 100 pastors. It wasn't a big city, 200,000 people maybe.
Yeah.
And they would get together just to pray for the city and all kinds of evangelical churches, but different, like you said, Assemblies of God or Brethren or Baptist or whatever it is. And it was really because you need that. You need to be together because the opposition is so big that you're facing.
Well, that's been integral for me because we've been subletting 3 other churches for 5.5 years. Wow. And we've been a Sunday night church from day one. And
still to this day.
Yeah, still, yeah. We're in a Filipino Pentecostal church on Sunday nights. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Well, there we go.
Danny's out.
Danny's out.
How are we getting in? He's out. He's out. You're still in though.
I'm still in.
Yeah.
Coming to you, not live, but in action.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've been subletting for 5.5 years. Now, a little vignette of that was, I moved to Turin with my wife 6.5 years ago, and an email arrives from an old Bible college couple from Hungary, 8 or 16 years prior to that moment. And they said, I don't know if you remember us. And I was like, yeah, of course I do. And they said, well, we've been working for the Salvation Army in Whittier, California.
Whoa.
And they're moving us to Turin, Italy this summer. And we heard through mutual friends that you're in Turin. And I was like, oh, wow, well, when you move here, hit me up and we'll have lunch. And so they came, and literally they came in July, and the first Sunday of September 2019, we started subletting the Salvation Army historical building downtown Turin. It was 100 years old as a church.
I bet it's a cool old building, huh?
It's just in the heart of the city. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's nice.
But, you think like, as a church planter, I'm going to need all this upfront support money to get started, to get going. And it's like, well, maybe God has like a back end blessing rather than this front end support. So don't be afraid to step out and see how maybe some random email from somebody from 15 years ago might pop in your email box.
Yeah.
So for 4 years through the pandemic, we had a religious zone building for 200 euros a month. 200 euros a month for 4 years.
There's church planners out there they're scared to get started because they don't have all the money they need, all the help they need, they don't have the answers.
Yeah.
Guess what? You're not going to have them until you get started, and then you walk in.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of that song, how good and pleasant is when brothers draw in unity. There the Lord commands a blessing. And because you're able to partner and have that love and learn from that guy and receive his love, but then also work with other churches, God literally gave you a building for a cheap amount, which should be 2,000 plus euro a week, probably.
Oh man, yeah, exactly. And you just never know how those things are going to work out. And then 4 years after that, it just really wasn't working out because we were growing, and the basement of this old building was moldy, and the kids can't be in mold, right?
Yeah,
the mom's like, we got to figure this out. And I'm freaking out because we still don't have the money for a building, and I'm just like, Lord, what? And anyway, a month later, this other friend that worked for Compassion Italy, who was an interim pastor at an apostolic church in the city, said, hey, Dave, would you guys need to ever rent a building? We have a building that's not really being used. And so then that next step for a year, a month later from us getting into that thing, that interim guy left and the new guy was hostile from day one.
Yikes.
But even there, like, we wouldn't have gotten into that with the hostel guy.
Yeah.
But the other man of peace that we met ended up being the door in for a year, and then we got kicked out of that. But
How do the Italian people themselves, because these are the churches and they can tend to be territorial wherever you go, but there are some that, like you said, you're going to find. What about the people, the Italian people, just the people on the street? How do they perceive you as a church, as a Christian, and even as an American who's been living there in their city?
so the south and north of Italy are very different. A lot of northerners immigrated to South America, Australia. A lot of southerners had immigrated 100 years ago to New York, Chicago, Canada. So because of that, a lot of evangelicalism came from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. Some of those Italians went back to southern Italy. And the north remained unreached, and the south is full of evangelical existence. So if you're down in the south, the evangelical church is much more known and is diffused, even though the percentage per capita is still really low compared to the States. The north, there's a lot of ignorance. So I would say that most Italians in the north would look at us like we're Jehovah's Witnesses, just
like a cult, kind of.
yeah, like, so what are you? It's a cool.
Because you're not Catholic.
That's right. Yeah, so we're Christian, or like, oh well, we're Catholici, we're Catholics. It's
The
like,
real ones.
yeah, so it's like, well, we're not. And they would say like your religion versus my religion. It's like, well, it's like Christianity. We believe in the basics of Christianity. Well, and then usually with an Italian in the north, you'll say, well, what is it that you believe? And then you'll kind of work through what we believe as Christians. And because they don't know what they believe, they'll say, well, that kind of sounds like what I'm supposed to believe.
Yeah.
How is that different from what I'm supposed to believe? And then you kind of say, well, Roman Catholicism. So you teach them what they believe, and they're like, okay. So I would say that living in Italy is kind of like living in Mormon Utah.
Okay.
It's a culture that is almost Christian.
Yeah.
They think they know a lot about the gospel, and they think that they don't care to know more.
Yeah.
So it's they got they don't have justification by faith, right? At least Roman Catholicism, they believe in the Trinity,
Right, they believe those fundamentals, but
Yeah,
back on
yeah.
the salvation issue.
That's right. Yeah. So works-based versus justification by faith.
How does that affect your teaching and ministering to the specific people that you're dealing with? Because, I'm assuming if you're in Utah, you're going to study more about the Mormon religion and sort of have an apologetic answer. How is being in Italy and understanding Catholicism and the differences, like, how have you used that to have impact and preach the gospel?
Yeah, that's a great question. The guy I worked with for the first 8 years in Italy, Craig Qualm up in Montebelluna, just did a lot of great work. And one thing I really appreciated whenever we got to an issue that talked about Roman Catholicism is he would kind of just keep it general and say, the institutional church of this nation would say, but we see biblically that, whether it's Paul writing to the Ephesians, he refers to them as the saints, and calling living Christians. And so he wouldn't attack and be mean. There wasn't like a malice in his approach. And that's one thing I really really liked his approach in that.
Like, you can come out guns blazing and just be like, you guys are stupid, this is what you believe. You're better than you.
Yeah.
Hey, Daniel, we should never do
Well,
that.
I love what Peter says. I love what Peter says. Peter says, if any of you suffer because of being an evildoer,
Yeah.
don't rejoice in
Right. It doesn't
in
count.
God. Yeah, but if any of us suffer for the actual gospel itself, we'll praise God for that. So I think that just the awareness that, like, my teachings as well, are on the radio in Turin. I don't want to come out just like offending people unnecessarily.
No.
Like, if the truth
They're going
of
to
the
found it
gospel-
because of the truth.
That's right. Yeah. But ultimately, Ephesians 4:19 tells us to preach the truth in love, right? Speak the truth in love. So I think that as we present the gospel, as we teach the word of God, the word of God's going to speak prophetically in the lives of anybody present or anybody listening through the audio files. And I don't think that we need to come out and be offensive, So, but yeah, I think there is an awareness, and I tend to just take on what Craig used to say. Just the institutional church of this nation would say that we work towards a place of justification, but we believe that the gospel tells us we work from our justification. Yeah, so kind of working those things in, so that some of the people have this cultural background But I just think as we preach the word, it's going to reach anybody in any given place. But the more and more we go forward with globalism and the world that we find on mission is a multicultural world. So I think that I'm actually not fully every Sunday keeping a Roman Catholic perspective in mind.
Sure.
Because we have maybe 14 nationalities in our church. In Turin, of 110
do
people.
Iceland, or do you just do Italian?
I'm very focused on Italian language. Yeah, I've kind of, if there's really one old school Calvary thing for me, I'm going through the Bible cover to cover. So I'm doing Genesis.
So it's
Genesis to
Sunday
Revelation.
mornings?
Sunday. Well, we're Sunday
night. Sorry,
but yeah, our Sunday service.
Your main service is through the Bible.
2 chapter a Sunday average, and I'm going through. And
How much? Yeah, you started at Genesis 1:1. Where are you at?
Well, we started the church do some other things, but in year 2, 5 years ago, I started Genesis, and then we gotten through First Kings in 5 years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I've got about 12 years left through the Bible.
That's great. Dude, people, I mean, it must be challenging for you, first of all, to teach not just, I mean, in English it's challenging, but then English is your first language.
Yeah.
And so to teach in Italian.
Yeah.
And then to do 3 chapters. And 2 chapters a Sunday is challenging. And some of the content of 1st, 2nd Chronicles, Numbers, and all those can be challenging. So, I mean, how do you do it? What do you do? Kind of list your secrets.
Give us your outliner right now.
Well, I think one big thing is I for sure have my text double spaced and columned out.
Okay.
I print.
Do you read it? Do you transcript?
I read. Well, no, my preaching I don't do a transcript, but I do print out the verses a bit bigger of a font, space it out so it's super legible. I do bold and underlining of the text, and I paragraph chunk it out.
Okay.
I think a lot of my notes is like public speaking helps. So that you don't, because I think a lot of nervousness happens when you get lost of where you're at and you're not sure when to stop reading and you forget like, okay, I wanted to stop here. I want to say this. I have my cross references, a couple main sentences. Being that I do preach in a second language, I will frequently have like an opening 2 sentences or a closing 2 sentences that I write out.
Sure. So
or maybe a few points that I really want to say it this way with these words. So, especially in the second language, I do find myself having a couple things written out, but mostly I don't write word for word.
That's great.
But the 2 chapter average, sometimes it's 1 chapter, sometimes it's 3.
Yeah.
And I think our people too were really like, we're really going to do like Leviticus and Deuteronomy. And it's like, yeah, we're going to do it.
But if you know the New Testament, you know Christ, it's easy. I mean, not easy, but you can make the parallels, and Christ is there all throughout. And,
and there's always that desire not to be overly allegorical.
Sure,
The omniscient God spoke these scriptures with Christ in mind and the gospel in mind. So all of these things speak of him, right? And Luke 24, Jesus explains everything. From Moses through the prophets about himself, and it's been incredible.
That's probably blowing people's minds because that's not normal in any. It's not a tree.
Yeah.
Especially probably in a country where it's not.
I even to go through the pandemic, I remember there was a moment where we're in Leviticus 13 about leprosy, and it was a really divisive moment for a lot of churches around the world.
Yep.
And even for us, we had some people that were pro-liberty and some people that were like pro-isolation and health and protect. And I was like, church, like here in Leviticus 13, God is encouraging isolation for 7 days and then an inspection and another 7 days of isolation. And like God absolutely cares about the health of the assembly. But after a few inspections, if it's not found that the person has leprosy, set him at liberty.
That's right.
And so the church in Italy was tough. Italy took more of the Chinese lockdown model than the American liberty model.
I was in New Zealand at the time. We did too. You were. What pandemic? Daniel thing.
Pandemic? What?
Get our things.
Well, I'm in Southeast Florida, so I went as slow as our culture.
Okay.
So,
man.
but it was definitely a little bit better. Our governor was like, go outside for some mental health walks.
Oh man. Yeah, in Italy, you could walk your dog, but you couldn't walk your kids. And a lot of people live in these high-rise condominiums. And so for 3 months, and that was even why my wife's kids project came out. birthed out of the pandemic, trying to encourage the kids.
It sparked a lot of cool stories like that. So.
But in that moment, like for our church that was being divided, I was like, hey, church, like God cares about both sides. And I think
from the scripture you were able to do that.
From that chapter.
Because you were teaching through that chapter.
And we were in a particular new moment of red zone lockdown. We couldn't go city to city. And it was like a lot of frustration. It's like, God cares about both. And I think that sometimes it's like the bumper guards when you go bowling, with kids. And it's like God's able to kind of help us not go too far to one side or the other of any given argument. And as we teach through the scriptures, it's just, and John Corson used to say, where we are in the word is where we are.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of moments, even just kind of going through the word as a church plant. I've seen something that I've never heard anybody really talk about. And it's beautiful that Genesis starts with a family. It becomes a larger family. And then in Exodus, it becomes a group, a nation. And then they get some rules around worship and a place of worship. And then they take their first steps with Joshua to take territory. And then you kind of get into an established existence as a church and then leadership development. And so many times in these 6 years as a church plant going through the word, now we're coming to a place of recognizing maybe first elders of the church. And we just have finished the life of David, and we just did First Kings. And so even now establishing leadership and having been at that point in the word and planting a church and going through the Bible has actually provided a lot of good wisdom for the different seasons of a church plant.
That's cool.
And that
would you recommend a new church planter teach through the Bible?
Absolutely. But I started I did 10 weeks values, and I recorded that. I edit everything because I want the end archive, audio archive, to be a high quality where you can't tell it's edited, but you don't print a book without some revision.
Yeah.
But the first 10 weeks was a values thing. I recorded that, and any new person that ever came, I sent them the link on Dropbox for those 10 teachings.
Oh, nice. That's a good idea.
And then I did the Gospel of John. Our first public service was actually Easter Sunday, April 21st, 2019. We did the Gospel of John, and then just a fresh look at Jesus. And then we did Galatians to talk about the therefore of the resurrection and grace.
Yeah.
And then we had some new people from other churches, so we did 1 Corinthians and did church problems, and talked about a lot of church issues for these.
So you're doing other things, but
and then at some point I went to Genesis, and then just started working through.
Bro, I'm gonna do that because we did 1 John.
Yeah.
At our church in Florida.
Then you did 2 John.
And then we did 2 John.
Did you skip 3 John?
No, we did 3 John.
Okay, because you got him in 3 John.
3 John, yeah.
All of it.
Then I'm like, what are we gonna do? Jude. And then guess where we are? We just started Revelation chapter 2 last week.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Yeah. I find that in the Holy Spirit guides your congregation where you need to be. So like dealing with church problems, carnal issue. Okay, 1 Corinthians coming on. Let me teach you that.
Yeah.
Fundamentals of the faith, 1 Thessalonians. Paul did that for 3 weeks. They need to learn some fundamental stuff. So he writes to them. Yeah. So anytime in the season, we just did a revitalization, and the first book I taught was on Colossians. It's not about me. It's not about the merge. It's about Jesus. He's the head of the church. Right. Then I wanted to teach, okay, we don't really have government or a structure, or I want to re-emphasize what does that even look like. Let's go over Titus and what that looks like. So it's beautiful to go through books of the Bible because these letters are actually issues to real life problems.
Yeah.
And speak, and you can do it from Genesis through Revelation, or you could just do book by book.
Yeah.
And
plus, like skip around a little bit. Just
no, Daniel. The only spiritual way to do it. No, I'm saying.
No, say words, John Smith.
Yeah, a lot of people do like a New Testament, an Old Testament.
Yeah. I think one thing I have learned in the last 19 years of friendships, and there are so many iterations of the right way.
Yes.
I mean, I've heard Calvary guys who are like, on Sundays, I'm only ever in the Gospels. I just want to show Jesus, because they're working with the assumption that there's a lot of people on Christian. And then there's other guys like straight through, or it's a new, it's an old, it's a new, it's an old. There's
as long as it's the word, I'm good.
Bro, and check this out. I want to hear, what's the vision now that you have that plan, you're going through the word, you're in the season where you're raising up leaders and you're in the search of, I guess, getting another building because the fear of the Lord's upon you. Was simply like, but what's the vision to reach these 2.4 million people? And now that you're a little bit maturing as a church plant, what's the vision to plant more churches and to raise up leaders and train other Bible teachers there?
Well, I think in the missions context, there's for sure this sense of, for me at least, I feel like an expiration date more than if I was stateside. Maybe, pastor till I'm 65, 70. I'm 40 now. I've been in Italy 19 years. And I feel, eventually there's like aging parents. I don't know if I have 15 more years in the city. I don't know how much time. But what I'm trying to do is to eventually, when I leave, to leave the church with a paid off building, so that in the Italian context, it's difficult economically. It's like a first world country on its facade, but it's kind of a second world economy, really. I kind of have this desire, which has led my decision to sublet for 5.5 years, to get into a lease to own, so that we can then, instead of renting forever, we can pay off our own building in 10 years. And so we're 5.5 years in, we're 110 adults, about 25 kids, 11 men in a pre-leadership group. I'm about to recognize about 4 men as elders. And I found the building that over the last 4 or 5 months we've been negotiating on as a lease to own, the thing I've been praying for quite a long time. And we've been able to save money as a church because of our low rent for 5.5 years. And so I think for me as a missionary, with the expiration date of a possible exit, but just also I think the hopeful wisdom to render this local church autonomous from all American umbilical cords one day. That what we leave, maybe we leave a paid off simple building and the church can support their own full-time guy. And maybe a few part-time guys or other church planters. So the building we're looking at is about 100, if you have a space for about 160 chairs. And I think the long-term overarching goal is, when we start to get full, we start a Saturday night with one of the guys that wants to be a pastor and feels called to that, and we're working through that. And just encourage people in the church that the Saturday night service will be its own church plant eventually.
Yeah.
And so then maybe we're eventually 3 churches in the metro center of Turin, 3 churches of 200 rather than 1 of 600. Nice. That we try to just intentionally work in that direction, because Italians are really parochial. They don't like to travel and be in traffic. And so being such a densely populated city, hard to find big buildings, hard to find parking. I think in our context of a big city, multiple smaller churches will be the long-term play. And I think ownership of this first building could help maybe future movements play out with more success. So
love it. Everything else, man, I sure appreciate you being on the show today and all your insight. I feel like I could give more and more information about Italy, but I think we better just go and visit him.
You're welcome.
That's just logical.
It's northern Italy.
Fly
in Milan.
I've got to fly to Milan.
Go to Como. Check it out.
www.comeeatpizza.com.
Really?
Yeah. That's what we're thinking about for our church domain. Yeah, comeeatpizza.com.
Okay. Yeah, I love you pizza.
No cappuccinos in the afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah. Italians don't like air conditioning. So be prepared.
That's valid. We're from Florida. We're hot all the time.
That's true. No, it's just really cool. Again, like we said in the beginning, a lot of people romanticize Italian. They want to visit the pizza, the pasta, the stuff. But
that's right.
There's gospel work that needs to get done in all nations.
Somebody has to do it.
Someone has to.
Somebody has to go suffer for the gospel of Italy.
That's right.
Come on.
All right, David. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, guys.
I'm looking forward to see what God does with your church, man.
Yeah. God bless you.
All right. God bless. Thanks for listening. The Cultivate Church Planting Podcast is part of CGN Media, a podcast network that points to Christ. Check out cgnmedia.org for more great shows and ways to support the ministry.